Good morning. Please be seated. Thank you all for coming today. Good morning and welcome to the Heritage University Fall Student Convocation. My name is Lori Faith and I'm the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. A convocation is a group of people formally assembled for a special purpose. We have assembled here today to celebrate the achievements of our students and to honor faculty members who, throughout their careers, made extraordinary contributions to supporting the students in their academic and their personal journeys. We are pleased that you are all here to help us celebrate today. To begin our ceremony, I would like to invite Mr. Jeff Thompson, the Chair of Psychology, to provide an invocation, and I ask the audience to please stand for this.
Going to read from a favorite poet of mine, the Irish poet and priest John O'Donoghue, a blessing for a new beginning, and then I'll say a brief prayer. For a new beginning, in out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you are ready to emerge. For a long time it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground. Your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure, hold nothing back, learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. Let us pray. Lord, Almighty Creator of all that is, God of beginnings, you know the end from the beginning. You are the Alpha and the Omega without beginning or end. Please bless this convocation, this new beginning of a new year, with your grace, your peace, and your mercy. As we learn, teach us to be gracious. As we strive, grant us your peace. And in all that we do, show us your mercy and teach us to become merciful. Amen. Please be seated. I'd like to invite Mr. Jim Bush, Vice President of Information Technology, to the podium.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to our Fall Student Convocation. My name is Jim Bush. I'm the Vice President for Technology. And I'm very pleased to invite Mr. Zia Larashby to the microphone to provide us a brief welcome and to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Larashby is a business major and Yakima, Washington native. He is the 2016-17 president of the Heritage University Student Government Association. Mr. Larashby.
Well, welcome, students. Sorry, my voice is a little gone, so bear with me here. But on behalf of the student government, we wanted to express to you guys that we hope that you take a moment as students to reflect on this day and the little piece of paper that you get, because it is a literal testament to the hard work, the sacrifice, the early mornings and the late nights, and everything in between. And I hope you're very proud of that. With that being said, please rise and remove your hats as we do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Heritage University's president, Dr. John Bassett.
Thank you, Dr. Faith. Well, you've already been welcomed, but welcome again. I think Fall Convocation is a very special time. I'm pleased here to acknowledge one of my bosses, Tom Mears, member of our Board of Directors. We also have many distinguished guests with us from the University of Washington, from our friends at Legends Casino, from the healthcare community in this region. It's wonderful to have them here. I'd also like to introduce a few people that are a few of the leaders of the university that are here with us but don't have speaking parts. Dr. Celestino Lemus, the Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment, in the front seat there. Miss Mary Lou Harrison is around here somewhere. Here you are, the Dean of the College of Education. And others will be introduced as they have speaking engagements. Convocation, as the provost says, a special occasion. For those of you that did take high school or college Latin, you also know that it comes from two words, con, together, and vocation comes really from a Latin infinitive vocare, to call. So this is the time we call ourselves together and say it is the start of the academic year. We're ready to go back and study and work and get ready for the lives ahead. When we come here at Heritage, when we convoke, when we have our convocation, when we have our study, we're in a very special place on the historical land of the Yakima Nation, and in the shadow of Pato, which some of you know as Mount Adams. It brings a very special kind of spiritual resonance to everything we do here. Influences us. We have a lot to learn from the Yakima Nation, even as we see ourselves as the educators teaching others. I was thinking in preparing for today how the history of Heritage, which is not a long history, 35 years, really depends on 4 or 5 fundamental entities, phenomena. As you know, Heritage in some ways grew out of a college called Fort Wright College, which was in Spokane. This was a college run by the Sisters of the Holy Names of Jesus and Mary. In fact, had been called Holy Names before being called Fort Wright. And when, because of a number of difficulties they had, they needed to go out of business, one of the side effects of that was that the regional site they had here in the valley, which educated most of the teachers in this valley, had no place to go at that point. And, you know, some of the big guys at UW, WSU said, you're too small for us to mess with. And it was at that point that 2 wonderful Yakima women said, we're going to start a new college. Now, be honest, folks, right? If you had been here with them, with Martha and Violet back there, your first advice would have been, you're out of your tree. You don't just start new colleges. You need money, you need land, you need influential trustees. Well, they were resourceful, got some money, land from the nation, and got some influential trustees, and 35 years later, that's history. Now, without Fort Wright College, in a way, there's no program here that had to be preserved, right? Secondly, without the Yakima Nation, there's not only no Martha and no Violet, but there really is nobody here saying we need to start something new. It's hard to imagine Heritage without that. Thirdly, it is impossible to imagine Heritage without Sister Kathleen Ross, because when those ladies went to her and said, you need to be the first president, she was the provost of Fort Wright at that time, and I'm sure she was sort of, I have to do what? But a very spunky lady, a very strong lady, and one cannot imagine the history of Heritage University without the faith, the grit, the resilience. Sister Kathleen, I'm sorry she can't be with us today, but I know that she had also a lot of help from a lot of her fellow sisters who taught here at the college at that time. But our history is inseparable from her. Fourth, We have had since that time a tremendous immigration of people from Mexico, largely working in our agricultural world here, that have enriched this culture and this community, and now, of course, provide a majority of the students here. They bring a rich culture that, in combination with the Yakama Nation's culture and with so many other cultures that come together in this valley, help provide a very special learning experience on this campus. And there are times when I talk with students on this campus that I hear something I really love to hear. It was reiterated last night when I was having dinner with Dr. Nirati, head of our nursing program, and she said, you know, our students, if they find nursing taking place in hospitals that isn't very good, they will say, that isn't how a heritage nurse would do it. And we also know there are times that people say, that isn't how a heritage teacher would teach this class. Or who would say, that isn't how a heritage business graduate would be helping to work with his or her staff in this company, or a heritage social worker, or a heritage scientist, or whatever. We think something very special happens at this university in the educational experience. And one of the wonderful things to see is the new freshman students being welcomed by the upperclassmen and being told, this is how we do it here at Heritage. And they set the culture. And that's what you want. You want a college where the upper class students are setting a positive standard for the new students. And the same thing with faculty, right? New faculty come in, they get acculturated in the right ways. So it is a special learning experience we have here. And so it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the beginning of what is going to be a very, very special year here. Before I introduce our speaker, we're very happy to have her here, I want to make one other announcement. We have had a center on campus, a very successful center, called the Center for Native Health and Culture, established by Michelle Jacob when she was here on the campus. It's ready to move into a new phase, and we are providing a new name for it. Its name will now be the Center for Indigenous Health, Environment, and Culture. Dr. Jessica Black will be the director. There will be no diminution of its focus on healthcare and culture in the Yakama Nation, but it will give us the opportunity to bring in some of the research we do with indigenous cultures in Panama, Mexico, things happening in South Africa, and we'll have the kind of broad reach that our colleagues at the University of Washington experience with their Center for Indigenous Wellness and Research Institute. It's really an institute there. So I would like to invite Dr. Black to come up to the podium for a minute, 2 minutes. I told her she could have two, actually, to describe briefly what is intended with the center under its new name. Jessica, come on up.
Thank you, Dr. Bassett. A little shorter here. This is a really exciting chapter. Dr. Jacob gave us such a beautiful start with the work that she did and as our former director. And she's now at the University of Oregon doing wonderful work for Native education. And so when we were thinking about all the work that we're doing, work that my father, Mr. Black, who has worked for years with indigenous peoples in Belize and Mexico, all over the world, and now we're also starting a new chapter in Panama and also expanding some of the projects we do in Mexico, we realized that we wanted our name to reflect that. And so we've changed to Indigenous. And while I'm here, there's two events that we have coming up. The first, we're inviting a professor from Northern New Mexico College, Dr. Pedro Chavarria, to talk about access for Native and Hispanic students and peoples into natural resource jobs. Because one of the things that we believe strongly in our center is that the health of the land is often reflected in the health of the cultures and the peoples. And so that's why we've added the word environment to our center's name. And he will soon be an emeritus, but Mr. Black will also be a new affiliate of the center, as will Miss Elise Washines, that very soon will be Dr. Washines, we expect in the next year. So we really look forward to seeing you at the event when Dr. Chavarria gives his talk on September 30th. And also on our major inaugural events on December 12th and 13th. December 12th for all of you faculty should ring a bell since that's when our final grades are due. For students, it's after your final exams. But we will be inviting the leadership of the Nove Bugle tribe up here. They're 250,000 strong in Panama. They occupy over 10% of the country's landmass, but there's a lot of development that hasn't been done, and poverty is certainly something that's a struggle, but it's a beautiful culture with a strong language and strong people, and they've asked for our help. And so we're inviting the president of the Nove, as well as two of his governors and the Minister of Health, and they'll be here for a symposium on indigenous development. We'll be exploring issues such as access to resources, sovereignty, and economic development. So I hope to see you there. Thank you.
So while continuing with our commitment to enrich the opportunities of First Nation students from North America, we have a way also of being a center of study, connecting First Nations of North America with other parts of the world as well. We are especially pleased today to have a wonderful person as our speaker. And when I first met her, I said, I cannot think of a person who would be a better fall convocation speaker at the university. And she made me very happy by saying yes. But if she'd said no, I wouldn't have stopped. I'd have come back next time and seen that. Nicole June Maher joined the Northwest Health Foundation as its president and CEO in August 2012. And people tell me she's the youngest president of a major foundation in the Northwest. But that may be less important than the fact that the foundation has gone through almost a complete transformation since she took over. She's been it and she both have become champions of advocacy, policy, and supporting vulnerable populations to be leaders in creating healthy families and communities. The importance of local people growing up to become the leaders of their organizations. Northwest Health Foundation is also proud to have a majority-minority staff and board. Previously, Nicole served as the executive director of the Native American Youth and Family Center in Portland, and our vice president, Dr. Celestino Limas, remembers her from those days. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to tell Nicole Maher stories that I learned from him or tell Celestino Limas stories that I learned from her. So I better keep my mouth shut or I'll be in trouble with both of them. Under her leadership, the Naya Family Center grew from a staff of 5 people and a budget of $200,000 to a staff of over 100 and a $10 million budget. In 2010, Naya served over 5,000 families as a wraparound community service organization, offering culturally specific education programs, a fully accredited school, financial literacy and micro enterprise development, social services, domestic violence prevention and response programs, and comprehensive poverty reduction programs. She has a master's degree in public health from the Mark Hatfield School of Government at Portland State, and 2 bachelor's degrees, one in public health and one in American Indian Studies from Oregon State University. She completed a fellowship at Harvard Medical School, as well as the Robert Wood Johnson Minority Medical Education Program at Yale Medical School, and has received numerous leadership and industry honors in the state of Oregon. She serves on a number of governing boards. I'm not going to list all of those because you came here to hear her, not me. But I will tell you that people in Oregon say she doesn't serve on a board without significantly changing and impacting that board. I believe it. And so whether it's the North National Urban Indian Family Coalition or the Portland City Club or anything else, she's an agent of change. She was born in Ketchikan, Alaska, attended school on the Siletz Indian Reservation in Oregon, and is a member of the Clicket tribe of Southeast Alaska. Proud mother of 3 children. Please join me in welcoming Nicole Maher.
Kohayam, Katamaika, Kanoe Nekatotum, Gunesh Chish. I wanted to start today by greeting you and acknowledging you in the Chinook trade language and acknowledging you all as my relatives, and then thanking you in my language, the Tlingit language. It's an honor to be here today in your beautiful campus and to be here with all of these amazing future leaders of our region. So today I'm going to share a little bit about my journey and a little bit about how I came to this deep belief that communities that experience the greatest disparities actually hold the most important solutions for our society. So I'm going to start actually by telling you a little bit about who I am and where I'm from, and I want to introduce you to Nicole Maher 1.0. So this is one of the only pictures I have of me as a child. And this is me when I was about to turn 8 years old. It was 1985, and this is actually a passport picture. Now, the little girl you see in this picture was incredibly quiet. I almost never spoke, and I was painfully shy. This little girl that you see here, well, not even 8 years old yet, I had lived with 6 different families and gone to 5 different schools, and I had already learned the hard lessons about what life isn't and what life is. Now, I don't want you to think ill of my parents. My parents were not bad people. My parents are actually incredibly fabulous, especially if you understand their stories and what they've been through and what they were going through at the time that this picture was taken. Now, during the time this picture was taken, our family lived in a little village called Kupernoff in southeast Alaska. And our family was in an interesting time. So after many years of hardship, my mother had actually inherited a little bit of money. And so what do you do when you suddenly come upon resources and you've never had them before? Well, apparently what you do is buy a used Chevy van and decide to drive all the way through Canada and then Washington and then Oregon and then down to the Baja Peninsula. And that's what my parents decided to do. And it was the 80s, and this was a used van that didn't have windows that opened. And I may be exaggerating, but in my mind, they smoked the entire time. It was the 80s, so it was pretty common. And I hated that van. I hated that van. I was so mad that I was on yet another journey and that I was forced into a situation where I really felt like I didn't have influence. And as we traveled, I got more and more mad. And you may be wondering, like, when was this? Where was school? And the Alaska state education system is actually pretty good, and so what they did was box up my entire 3rd grade year and put it in a box, which we took in the van. And so as we continued on this trip and I got more mad, I began to think about what kind of future I wanted for myself. How would I get that? What would happen if I actually got that? And if I tried to get it and failed, what would the consequences be? And so I thought it was probably a bad idea to, escape from my parents or ditch them. I was only not even 8 yet. And I couldn't get rid of that van. But the one thing I could do was get rid of something I didn't like. And what I didn't like was doing my schoolwork. And so on the ferry boat from the tip of the Baja Peninsula on our way to Belize, I opened the back of the van and I dragged out that box of school books and I threw them overboard. And it felt really good. And I know that's a strange message to share in an education setting, but it was really the beginning for me in so many ways. I learned a lot in that moment. I learned that I could influence my surroundings. I learned that I did have a voice. And I learned a lot about consequences. So one of the consequences I had predicted was that I would get a spanking, which I did. My sister also got a spanking for not watching me. But for the most part, the sort of self-respect and the vision I had about how I could influence my own future was pretty amazing. There were also consequences I didn't anticipate. So when you throw all your books away in the beginning of September and it's the 80s and no one can mail you new books, there are consequences. I ended up in special ed for 4th grade and 5th grade. And my fellow staff at Northwest Health Foundation will tell you that there have been lifelong spelling consequences for me and for all of them. And certainly now that I'm a parent and I see the value of education, I would never advocate that anyone miss a whole year of school, and I'm a champion of attendance. But I do feel that there are some important lessons from that initial moment and then moments later on in my time as a young leader. The most important thing that I realized is that while there are risks and consequences for taking action, there are risks and consequences for not taking action. I learned that lesson again when I was a high school student. By that time, our family had moved to the Siletz Indian Reservation in Oregon. And at that time, they had closed our local high school on the reservation, and we were just desegregated to go to a high school nearby in a small mill town called Toledo. And that's where I really began to see firsthand some of the injustices that were incredibly prevalent in our community. The fact that when the students from our community were sent to Toledo, we were immediately put in remedial classes or in special education. The fact that most of the families in Toledo wouldn't let their children come into our community because they said it wasn't safe. And you could see, even in those first few years, that so many students were leaving school because they didn't feel welcome, they didn't feel connected, and they didn't feel like anyone believed in them. And so in that experience, what was so lovely was to see many students coming together and taking a stand and saying, we deserve something different, we deserve something better. And not any of us alone are the right leader, but all of us together can make change. And it was difficult. We were labeled as troublemakers. We were told no in so many different ways. But eventually we were able to overrule some racially biased curriculum. We began to get elders to be able to come into our school and teach traditional values and worldviews and the real history of our region. And we began to see a shift in our culture and our identity as a community. And those opportunities, while challenging, while oftentimes would make you feel lonely or isolated or different, they were incredibly important because, as I said before, while there are consequences to using your voice and sharing your truth, there are worse consequences to your spirit and your community's well-being when you let injustice go unchecked. The last piece I would share is just the incredible journey. This is a series of embarrassing pictures of me, by the way, that I had when I went to the Native American Youth and Family Center. So at the age of 22, I had an opportunity to go and work for a small nonprofit in Portland. And at that time, I didn't know anything about urban Indians. I was brand new into my professional career. But when I showed up for my interview as the education coordinator, there was something very magical about that space. And it was really the elders and the leaders who were already there, who had made the decision that no one was going to come and rescue their community, that they knew their own solutions, and this deep belief that their children deserve something different and something better, and that they were going to go and get the best for their kids. And so I joined that team in 2001, and I was just going to stay for a little while. I was just going to get some experience and then go to graduate school, and I stayed for 12 years. 6 months later, they invited me to become the executive director. I have a theory about that. I don't think anyone else applied. And I also say I don't think I would have accepted the job if I knew how to read a budget, because they were not in a great financial condition. But even though there were some haphazard factors, it was the best decision I ever made. I had the opportunity to see firsthand what it looks like when a community realizes the goals and dreams that they have for themselves. I had the opportunity to see what it looks like when elders and parents and kids decide on a shared destiny, when they decide that they have an interdependent future, and they go out and they create it together. That 12 years was incredible. I will tell you, I probably made 2 million mistakes, some of them 3 and 4 times. But I learned so many lessons about how communities can create their own destiny and how we can rely on one another. I learned that relationship building and trust is incredibly important to that success. I learned that half the battle is just showing up and doing most of what you've said you were going to do. And I learned that being humble and apologizing when you've made a mistake can go a long, long way. In that time, we had the opportunity to build out early learning centers. We created our own fully accredited high school that has the 5th highest graduation rate for Native high school students in the country. We developed housing. We built housing. And we bought a 20-acre campus with an 80,000 square foot building and refurbished it. Those are a few of the things that I'm so proud of that we accomplished, but the thing that I'm most proud of is that there were many, many leaders from every spectrum of our community that did it together. There was no one leader that made it happen. It was a group of committed individuals who had a preferred future for their children, and they made many sacrifices to get there. The other thing that was so important and such a key ingredient of the success was that our community decided that we had something to contribute, not just to the Native community of Portland, but to the larger community. We decided that in order for us to be successful, we had to vote, we had to be civically engaged, we had to get folks elected who either cared about our issues or were from our community. We elected the first Native American school board member. We recently elected what will be the first Native American to serve in the Oregon legislature. But I think what's important beyond any of those positions is the community realizing that they have power and influence. When I had the opportunity to join Northwest Health Foundation 4 years ago, I was incredibly clear about what I wanted to do if the board would have me, which was to take some of those key elements about community self-determination and communities knowing the best solutions to a larger group of communities in Oregon. And while the techniques and community organizing principles we may have used at NAIA probably don't apply to everyone, what does apply to many communities is that communities know themselves the best and they know what works, and if you don't support the capacity and the leadership of those from the community, you will never achieve the goals that you want. I'm so excited to be here with all of you and to congratulate you on your journey to higher education. I look around this room and I know that all of you, fueled by the tremendous asset of education, that you will make an impact and use your voice in so many ways to make the Pacific Northwest better. Thank you.
Her comments, wonderful talk, remind me specifically to kind of reiterate her charge to the students here that you are the future leaders of this valley. Somebody isn't going to come in from the outside and fly in and do it. You're going to do it yourselves, and I want to give you one additional charge building on Nicole's talk. That is to get out with the young people in your community. The ones that are going to the schools that you went to a few years ago. Get the 3rd graders, the 4th graders, the 5th graders, 6th, 7th, 8th graders to realize the kind of future they have if they will work for it, because they too are needed for the future of the Yakima Valley. We do not have a large enough percentage of our own young people who commit themselves and work for the future of that. And you are better positioned than anybody else to go out to them and say what they can do to their lives, with their lives. Now, I want to invite the President's Liaison to the Yakima Nation, Maxine Janice, and Professor Elise Washins from our College of Education. Help me come up. Nicole, we're not through with you yet. Okay? We have a presentation to make to you. And, Maxine, can you help me with this? Thank you. There you go. Can you get it out that way? All right, I'm going to put this back in here. This is, as some of you know, a Pendleton blanket. Pendleton blankets, Nicole, join us up here. Pendleton blankets are crafted and chosen for honored guests here based on the message that best fits the individual. I'd like to read the message for this blanket that was chosen for Ms. Marr. It's called an honoring blanket. Designed by Click-It artist Preston Singletary, the image on this blanket represents Raven, a shapeshifter who often employs crafty schemes to achieve his goals. In this story, the old chief who lives at the head of the Nass River keeps his precious treasures, the sun, the moon, and the stars, locked away inside beautifully carved boxes. Raven steals this light and makes his escape into the sky, carrying the sun in his mouth. The sun represents the enlightenment being given to all people. Congratulations, Nicole. Thank you, Elise. Thank you. And now I want to return the podium to our provost, Dr. Faith.
Thank you, Ms. Mara, for that inspiring speech. And I hope that all of the students here took away the message that you can do anything that you put your mind to and that you have that ability within you. So make the decision as she did to take your fate into your own hands and do what you will for the world. So one of the main reasons for Convocation today is to recognize the students who are on the 2016 Spring Dean's List. Students, we're going to ask you to come forward. Dr. Metasol Rodriguez-Price, the President of the Faculty Senate, will be reading all of your names as you come through. We'll hand your card to her. Please approach the stage from your left, exit on your right, and return to your seat. Dean Sonoda will present you with a ribbon and an honors pin, and the President will congratulate you. Guests, if you would like to take a photo of your student being congratulated, please feel free to come forward to do so. We will start with the students who have earned the highest possible grade point average, a 4.0, which means they got all A's in their classes here. We will then recognize students who earned a 3.5 grade point or higher, which means they were on the Dean's List. Students, please come forward. So if you were here to be recognized, please come up and over here. While it is not trivial to earn a grade point of 3.5 or not, our students have prioritized school over much of the rest of their lives, devoting time, energy, and sometimes extraordinary effort to achieve this honor. They do not do this in a vacuum. They are strengthened in this pursuit by the love of their families, the camaraderies of their classmates, the faith of their friends, and the support of their professors and other educators at Heritage University. So as we celebrate the students' accomplishments today, we also celebrate those who have helped the students with what they have already achieved and who will continue to be with them in spirit, if not in physical ways, as they complete their education and become contributing members of the community. Congratulations, students.
Adrina Sandoval. Lisalín Tomei. Rosangélica Miranda Luna. Miriam Castro. Kayla Burke. Jocelyn Huerta García. Maritza Macías. Alondra Lucatero. Bilana Tellis. Samantha Turgison. Savannah Lamas. Seong Park. Corbin Schuster. Stephanie Elizalde. Virginia Valdovinos. Justin Burke. Helene Flores. Cindy Lemus. Luis Cordero. Latasha Laris. Emiliano Orozco. Kimberly Hall. Rosie Saldaña. María Rueda. Cecilia Vizcaino de la Mora. Josephine Honahy. Brenda Lewis. Jazmín García. Dalia Sosa. Yesenia Salgado. Nereida Barajas. Michaela Doom. Cassandra Peña. Carmen Mejía. Janet Peña. César López. Christy Fiander.
Congratulations to all of our students on your achievements, and best of luck for a better term this semester than you had last semester. Little more work. The final aspect of today's event is to award emeriti status to recently retired faculty, recognizing their hard work, dedication, and success as professors at Heritage University. Each of the faculty members being honored today was recommended for this honor by the faculty as a whole. An emeritus is a retired member of a profession. Faculty members who have made significant contributions are recommended by their peers for this title, which means that she or he is remembered and honored as someone who has made a lasting impact on the university and on its students. Today, we would like to recognize the recently retired faculty who have been recommended for emeritus status and thank them for their service to our students, to the university, and to our community. Dr. Bassett, would you please come forward to introduce and offer congratulations to these individuals?
When Dr. Faith asked me if I would like to be the one that introduces and congratulates our emeriti faculty, actually I said, don't throw me in that briar patch, but it was wonderful. And the truth of the matter, I think what she really felt was that they had to put up with me longer than they had to put up with her, and therefore it might be more appropriate for me to talk about them, but they're wonderful people. In fact, they've helped us in some cases recruit people who could, I don't know, people to replace them, but people to succeed and follow them. But this is a wonderful group of faculty whose colleagues have honored them with that designation. I'm going to talk briefly about each one, and maybe as I talk, each one will raise her or his hand. I'll call you up later, actually, to get something, but I thought it was easier if we could talk about each one individually while they're still seated. First person I want to recognize is Dr. Nina Barcenas, and Nina, you know Nina well. In the time I've been here, I don't go back to the time when Jim Falco and others were here in science. Nina was synonymous with sciences at Heritage. You know, if somebody said science at Heritage, everybody said, oh, Nina Barcenas. As she looks around at the size of the department now, she has to say, look what I've given birth to here. But it's wonderful because she really built our natural sciences into a set of programs that have prepared students to go on to graduate study and into many wonderful, wonderful careers. She's been, I think, especially successful for us in building research for undergraduate students and getting National Science Foundation funding for that so that students could spend, for example, their summer pursuing areas of research. And she has been a devoted advisor, a trusted mentor for so many students in the sciences. Nina, we will always be indebted to you for what you did to build this program. So I want to congratulate you. Second person, our distinguished Associate Professor of Business, Len Black. Len, would you, I think everybody knows you. Okay. I think Len was with us about 17 years, and who's counting? It is hard to imagine a business program at Heritage University without equating that with Len Black. I said to someone, we've all of these faculty have transformed students there. I'm not sure that any faculty member individually has transformed more students than Len has. He built a program into something that students will tell me, you know, a student interested in this valley, with even the remote idea that he might want to go into business, shouldn't think about going anywhere else except Heritage and Mr. Black's program. Because the kind of personal attention you get, the kind of opportunities you get to visit companies, to get mentored, been remarkable. We all know the success of the Enactus team that he built here, which I think is the only college in the country whose team at the SIFE and Enactus competition has finished in the Final Four nationally in 5 of the last 10 years. Truly remarkable record. His work with these students helped put Heritage on the map. We've got quite a legacy to follow there. Len, we will always be indebted to everything you've done for your students, and it's always been the students that have come first at Heritage University. Thank you so much. It's especially wonderful today to have Apanaki Buckley back with us. She raised her hand there. In fact, it is a little hard to start an academic year without thinking of Apanaki being in the classroom, without thinking of Apanaki training, educating that next group of students that are going to go on to be teachers, particularly those going on to teach in math and science in some of the younger grades. She has sent so many thoughtful and skillful educators out in the world. I think it's hard not to think that one of the major reasons that schools said, we want a Heritage graduate coming here to this school, is because of the kinds of students that she sent there for so many years. Her dedication to her teaching, to bringing together her passions of education and science, I think made every faculty member in the university her colleague. I can't point to a faculty member that wasn't here while you were here, Apanaki, that didn't think of you as a dearly trusted colleague. One of them, I don't care which college, arts and sciences, education, you know, it's like Paul saying, we have neither Greek nor Jew, we didn't have arts and sciences education. We all were colleagues of Apanaki's. She was recognized with the Board of Directors Faculty Teaching Award, the Faculty Leadership Award, and so many things. And this university will always have a place for Abenaki Buckley in its memories, in its heart, in its physical location. Thank you, dear. It's also great to have Janet back with us today. Over the last 6 years or so, nobody, I think, has been better at asking me the tough questions about heritage. I always respected it. It came from Janet. I said, I better pay attention because it's a darn good question. Not that the rest of you don't ask good questions too, but I knew if she was posing a question, it was a good one. She is, I can't think of anybody during that period of time. I think Janet was full-time for 8 or 9 years, but you taught here as adjunct for 150 before that, I think at least. About 26 years, I believe. In terms of thinking about the writing program, what we needed to do with the writing program, Janet's a hard act to follow. She's a hard person to replace. She has supported so many students. She supported the university in getting grants to help the students. She was just a key player, and also on Faculty Senate, a very key player. Also on when we started asking faculty members to serve on board committees, she became a member of the Finance Committee, and I think every board member that served on that committee with Janet, she was a full-fledged member of the committee. She set a kind of standard for faculty involvement at the strategic level of board service. I think in the absence of Janet, we are in a situation of completely rethinking our writing program here. And I think she will always have had a permanent impact on that writing program, the English department. But I think never again, as I said with Abenaki, never just a departmental member, always a member of the entire university faculty. Janet, we're beholden to you for what you've done for Heritage. Paul Dowdy. Paul, I can't think of Columbia Basin College without Paul Dowdy there. He is Heritage in the Tri-Cities. He and Jan are. I apologize, Jan. You too. They were Team Dowdy. This was not something separable. But Paul gave about 25 years overall service to Heritage. Already a distinguished career in the K through 12 world. And he was not only a professor of education down there, but he directed our Tri-City site. And it became by far the most successful regional site that we had and have ever had. He and Jan, when we went down there for their retirement party, this was a retirement party for Mom and Dad, not Professor and Jan. The sense of family down there among the students at Tri-Cities was remarkable. It was palpable. I don't know that I can count the number of people whose lives the two of you touched down there and that have gone on to great careers. Professor Rodriguez-Price, it was a hard act to follow, right? You had to think twice about agreeing to move into that position. And therefore, we are expecting in 40 or 50 years when we do your retirement that we will have comparable things to say. And we're confident because Paul and Jan set a great record down there. And so, Paul, not only the people down in Tri-Cities, but the people here in Toppenish will forever be grateful of what you've done for Heritage, for Tri-Cities, and for the central part of the state of Washington. Thank you. Now I'm going to invite these people one by one to come forward. Each will receive a vase, with a quote selected to represent their contributions. It says here that the provost is going to read the quote, but is it easier?
It's easier if you do.
It's easier if I do and you give the vase. Make sure we get the right one for the right person, right? All right. Professor Barcinas, the scientific mind does not so much provide the right answers as ask the right questions. Claude Levi-Strauss. Thank you, dear. Professor Len Black. The best CEOs I know are teachers, and at the core of what they teach is strategy. Michael Porter. I miss you guys. You be around. You be around. Oops. Professor Buckley, are we going to take that to her? Let us remember, one book, one pen, one child, and one teacher can change the world. Malela Yousafzai. You're going to have to ask these people to sit down because they're all standing.
By all means, sit. I've got about 5 sentences for you. First, thank you. You touched my heart. More importantly, this is an invitation to stay affiliated with a group of people I love. Thank you so much. And what's not to love? Because you care so much about student success that you have created amazing strategies like the Math Bridge program, like the new University 101 program, like the incredibly effective Writing Center. And students, you are succeeding, not just because you have great faculty support, but because you are who you are. In other universities, faculty have to explain tough concepts like privilege and oppression. You come to Heritage understanding oppression because you have experienced it, or you have the compassion to have noticed your friends who've experienced it. But you will leave Heritage University with degrees, and you will go out into the community with professions, and your children will not suffer the oppression that your parents suffered. So thank you for allowing me to stay connected to a university that empowers students. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those words, Apanaki. The last lecture. That's great. Janet, you got that? Professor Castellea. Janet, the art of teaching is the art of assisting discovery, Mark Van Doren. And Professor Dowdy, Paul Dowdy. A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops. Henry Adams. Pleasure to give it to you. Now, let's give our new emeriti faculty one other round of applause. I want to thank everybody attending today's celebration for being here, and we invite you to join us for lunch in the campus dining commons after the conclusion of the ceremony. In closing, Mr. David Wise, Vice President for Advancement and Marketing, will give the benediction.
Thank you, John. By way of benediction today, I would like to read a poem titled Remember by Joy Harjo. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them. Listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of the universe. Remember you are all people, and all people are you. Remember you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember language comes from this. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember. Thank you for being here on this momentous day. Go with God. Thank you.